Our scripture this morning is, as already foreshadowed, from Exodus chapter 16. The whole congregation of the Israelites set out from Elim, and Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. The whole congregation of the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I am going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. In that way I will test them whether they will follow my instruction or not. On the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on other days." The word of the Lord. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that there's a big construction project going on here on campus these days. So you all are aware of that construction project. The West Lawn cafeteria is being rebuilt. So they've closed the cafeteria for, I don't know how long, a year? Can somebody, it says spring 2025, I think, on the sign out here. Is it going to be that long? That's a long time. And so the college said, well, we don't need a cafeteria, and the students don't need to eat. Their learning is surely sufficient for them. Of course, the college didn't do that. The college went to great lengths to make sure that there was food for the students. And I mean, if you go through the Union Building, and I encourage you to do that, it's sort of a remarkable thing. There are these tables set up everywhere. Everywhere there's a corner, there are tables set up, and there's a food truck, a kitchen truck. It's not a food truck; it's a kitchen truck. That's a mobile kitchen that prepares all the food that the students eat. So they planned for this eventuality with great effort and great care. Now you can see the obvious analogy to our scripture this morning. At least I hope that you can see the obvious analogy. God leads the people into the wilderness, and food, it would seem, is a complete afterthought. It's not until the people become hungry, after how many days did it say? 15 days in the wilderness since they left Egypt? They hadn't eaten for 15 days, so they had some food that they brought with them, and I guess that all got used up. So we don't quite know for sure how many days they'd been without food, but they were hungry. And God seems sort of surprised by this, like, well, what's the big deal? And it was dramatized so wonderfully for us in the children's time. Like, they're hungry? Well, what's the deal with that? This scripture has all kinds of, I've been mind mapping this scripture with all the other sort of scriptures that interact and intersect with this scripture. So you think of it maybe like a solar system. You've got this scripture, and then you've got this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And the first one that is sort of mind mapped to is Deuteronomy 8, chapter 3. And in Deuteronomy 8, chapter 3, it says, "I let the people be hungry. I let the Israelites be hungry." This was by intent. This wasn't just some sort of accident. Their hunger was intentional. I wanted them to be hungry so that they might learn that they don't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. And then so that you mind map that, well, that takes you to, where does that take you to? Where Jesus quotes that very passage in the temptation accounts. He's in the wilderness. Sound familiar? Going through 40 days, sound familiar, of temptation. And he's tempted to turn stone into bread. And he says to the tempter, you don't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. And then I mind map over to Matthew chapter 6. Is not life more than food? And then I go over to the other parts of the Gospels where Jesus says, you must deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. You must lose your life if you want to find it. And after a while of doing this, it gets kind of crazy. This is crazy talk. Am I wrong? This is crazy talk. You must lose your life to save your life. You must live and thrive by denying yourself food. What is all this? What are we to make of this? Well, the idea, if we could call it an idea, is that the greatest joy and desire of our hearts, whether we know it or not, the greatest joy and desire of our hearts is God. And the world is filled with things that become barriers for us to being with God. This is the idea that's expressed throughout the Scriptures in all kinds of ways. That the fullness of joy, the greatest joy that we can experience, is communion with God. We do not think this way in our world, do we? We live in a very materialistic kind of time and place. Meaning and fulfillment are found in material ways. We store up for ourselves treasure on earth to make sure that we're going to be able to keep doing that, right? To be able to satisfy those wants and needs. If we can't consume it, it isn't real. And it doesn't matter. So the Scripture comes to us as just bizarre, as if from another planet altogether, another way of thinking, another system of thought. What are we to make of this in our times? And I thought this would be a really good place to end the sermon, and just to leave that there. I've really struggled with how to end this sermon. Not that we're nearing the end. Don't be so hopeful. I've really struggled where to take this sermon, because it's so at odds. This way of thinking in the Scriptures that's so central. This is not some peripheral sort of thing. It's so central to the Scriptures, is so alien to how we think and how we operate. So as I thought about this, I thought, well, let's look at our world today. And let's kind of assess how things are going. How's it working for us? How's this materialism working for us? Is it working well? This business of storing up, accumulation and accumulation, is that working? Is that working well? This whole idea of I've got to get mine and hang on to it. Is that working all right for us in the world? I don't know. You can answer for yourself. But I can't help but think maybe it's time for us to take another look at life being more than food. Maybe it's time to consider that we could seek something else besides these things, besides stuff, that we might seek God first and then trust that other things will be added to us. I'm just wondering, just kind of a thought experiment. What would that world be like? What if we desired God as much as we desired our next meal? What if we were thinking about God as much as we were thinking about what we're going to have for lunch? Sorry, I'm already thinking about it. Didn't mean to take you all there. But what if? What kind of world would this be? Jesus said, seek first God. Seek first the reign of God. Seek first God's righteousness, and these things will be added to you. Will they? Will they be added to us? Is that reliable? Can we trust that? I don't know. But I do know that maybe the way that we're going right now isn't working out so well. And it might be worth a try. Manna, raining down manna, was also part of the spiritual learning and the understanding. In that passage from Deuteronomy 8:3 that I mentioned, it says, I'm going to rain down manna for you as part of your learning process. And in Exodus that I just read, I'm going to rain down manna so that you might be tested and so that you might understand, that you might learn. Which is to say that there are practices. There's a practice that manna involves a spiritual kind of practice. Did you notice the practice? What is involved in the practice? One is gather up. Gather up what you need for this day. But don't gather up more than you need. So there's a spiritual practice involved in that whereby the people learn dependence on God and they learn to trust God. There is an exception to that rule, of course. You may gather up enough for 2 days in preparation for the Sabbath, which leads to another spiritual practice, and that is the practice of rest, but more importantly, the practice of being with God, of tending to God, the practice of loving God and being loved by God in that day as a community. These are practices that the people are given. And so they wander the wilderness for 40 years trying to learn these ways. And it goes well sometimes, and it doesn't go well at other times. And it's always a struggle. It's always a struggle. They always forget. Like I said, I've struggled with how to with where to take this sermon, with how to end this sermon, because I'm not sure that there's a neat ending to this. There's not sort of nicely wrapped up sermon. But I've been thinking a lot these days about aging, and about aging. Anybody getting older? Yeah, I'm getting older. Anybody not getting older? Talk to me after the service. Meet me in my office if you're not. We're getting older. And when we get older, we lose things, right? Anybody lose things? I lost my hair color a while ago. We lose things. We lose the ability to do things. We lose our senses begin to dull. Our hearing, our sight, our taste, our smell. Our memories become less reliable. Our bodies can't do the things they used to be. We're not as physically active as we once were, or we can't be as physically active. We lose things. And it hurts. I mean, literally hurts, right? Physically hurts. And I hear these words, is not life more than food? And I can't help but wonder, is not life more than hearing? Is not life more than seeing, tasting, smelling, running, walking? Is not life more? I don't know. I'm going to throw some things out there. I think this is edgy and dangerous. This feels risky to me to say that, to say this. But does this process of letting go and aging, is it somehow like being hungry? And does it in some way open a door for us to a different kind of joy than we'd experienced before? Does it open a door to us to see something else, to hear something else, to touch something else, to taste something else? The reality of God. Because if it's true that life is more, that life is more than these things that we can consume, that we can taste and touch and see and smell and hear, if life is more than that, then things do open up. Something new does open up. That a new joy can open up for us. That's hopeful for me. I think a lot about the meaning of life. I don't know if anybody else does. I do. It's an occupational hazard. And the older I get, and I hope this continues to happen to me, the older I get, the more I think the meaning of life for a human being, for all creation, is to know and love God and to be known and loved by God. And this is the journey of the Israelites, is it not? Is not this what they are called to? And is this not our journey too? That the Creator of all that is creates out of gift and out of love, gratuitously, freely, abundantly. Is not knowing that Creator the greatest joy we might have? I leave you with that question.